I just want to quickly begin by asking Ambassador Veena Sikri, this claim by Trump, it's explicit. It says Pakistan has been testing them. This is certainly something that New Delhi has to take note of.
Well, I think it is indeed an explosive statement. And the amazing part is that if you link up this statement with a very recent revelation somewhere on 25th of October or thereabouts, where a former American CIA agent, Kiriakou, gave an interview to the ANI, and where he said that since the time of President Musharraf, Pakistan's nuclear assets are in the control of America. They are in the control of the USA. And now, can we or should we link up that statement by the former CIA? He served as CIA station chief in Pakistan as well. So that what I'm trying to say is that if they are still in the control of the Americans, Pakistan nuclear assets, then it's America who've been worrying about whether Pakistan is conducting nuclear tests or not. So I think this is a very, very yes, it is explosive. It is impossible to reconcile it. But I think that President Trump's statement is also linked to Russia's own withdrawal from its ratification of the CTBT, which it did in 2023, and its recent statement that it's going to test its newer weapons. So, but of course, Russia has not held any test really so far since its withdrawal CTBT. So it's a very mystifying statement, I would say. And I think the key question to ask is who controls Pakistan's nuclear weapons?
Okay.
And I think after Operation Sindoor, more questions have risen about it rather than fewer.
Okay, fair enough. Now that brings us to another question. Who has the most nuclear weapons? Trump has said that the US has more nuclear weapons than any other country. Now, according to the US-based Arms Control Association, the world's nuclear armed states possess a combined total of over 12,400 nuclear warheads. Nearly 90% of all warheads belong to Russia and the United States of America. America's nuclear stockpile sits at about 5,200 warheads, while Russia has approximately 5,530 to be precise. China is the third largest nuclear power with about 600 warheads. France 230, the UK 225, India with 172, Pakistan with 170, Israel 90, and North Korea 50. That's the total head count. Trump's statement about nuclear testing came about 100 days before the expiration of the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, New START, in February 2026, the last remaining nuclear arms treaty between the US and Russia. The agreement limits each country to 1,550 warheads on deployed missiles capable of crossing continents. Since testing nuclear weapons in 1998, Pakistan has never formally declared an official nuclear doctrine. India, by contrast, adopted a no first use policy following its first tests. Now, as far as Pakistan's nuclear arsenal is concerned, let's quickly take a look at that. Air-based nuclear warheads 35, land-based 126, others stored warheads 9, sea-based 0, total nuclear weapons 170. Now, let me take this across to Dr. Tara Karta. Dr. Tara Karta, those numbers are scary. 170 is what they have, and if Trump is to be believed, they're making more.
Well, they officially stopped testing, of course. They did one test with China, one test, of course, which we know of. And other than that, generally, if they've done an underground nuclear test, there is a 99% capability of detecting it. There is that 1% chance, of course, because that can be kind of, seen as an earthquake. You don't know that region is seismically very active. So you don't really know whether they tested or not. They also are looking at new missiles. So I would assume there is a degree of critical weapons testing so that the warhead can be shaped to a smaller missile. That is the direction they're going. If they are indeed going for miniaturization, which they did actually in some time back, we're talking of still smaller nuclear warheads, I would assume they would get a considerable amount of assistance from China. And if China wants to test, it would like to do it through Pakistan. It will not test itself. But then again, I'm saying let's keep this clear. It is not easy to hide a nuclear test. Trump wants to do testing himself, which is why he's making these statements. And I think the Energy Secretary has made it clear that they're not going to do nuclear weapons testing entirely. They're going to do critical component testing, which is also an explosion, but it's not to the extent of being a fusion or a fissile device.
Okay, Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, if I were to ask you this, there is one question of what even Trump is saying. If the US is going to go back on something that it agreed to 33 years ago, it is actually not doing that. It's doing component testing. That's one way of putting it, and that's not necessarily nuclear testing. And the other issue is the fact that what he's saying about Pakistan. Both are extremely problematic.
The Energy Secretary of the United States has made it very clear that they are not going in for critical operation. That means this is not an explosion, but to test the various components of each of them, because with the technology change since 1992, they have not undergone, and therefore trying to clarify that, look, USA is not going in for an explosion, which is a non-critical thing that they're looking at it. So that is something to where they've taken the heat out of the entire this thing. But notwithstanding that, the Pakistan revelation is definitely there. Now, why he's mentioned Pakistan? The United States need not be taking, be mentioning Pakistan to be able to test a weapon of its own. What is Pakistan? Nothing whatsoever. But the fact that it also mentions very clearly that despite America having enough of the nuclear arsenal, which it can even destroy the world 150 times over. That is what he said in his statement. But having said that, the real vibrations that he talks about are the kind of earthquakes that have been noticed in Afghanistan. Now, that is something which is very important because it happened around Sindhu, it's happened a little later, and even now just recent with 6.3 Richter scale, because whenever earthquakes do occur, they come up with scientific distinction to where the platonic plates have moved or what. In this case, nothing of that is there. And therefore, statement made by Trump definitely indicate that Pakistan's onto something. Then also Pakistan wanting to give the nuclear assurance and a treaty with Iran, which is again very dangerous, knowing fully well how the Americans have treated Iran, how the Israelis hate anything to do with Iran, especially when it comes to nuclear. And then the way the Pakistanis are looking at wanting to be along with Iran to give it a nuclear guarantee, because Pakistan seems to be the Islamic bomb owner. We will eat grass, but we will have an Islamic bomb. Now, that's the way Pakistan is being seen. I think Pakistan got exposed. Notwithstanding all that, I think President Trump had let the cat out of the bag, primarily because the tariffs are also playing hell with all these countries. And now with the nuclear this thing, they'll play more hell because America wanting to test whether critical or non-critical will definitely increase the expenditure of all these countries getting into it. And therefore, economically, they are going to get ruined. So therefore, Trump is trying to do all means to ensure how China is taken care of, how Russia is taken care of, and of course Pakistan, the riprap for them, because Musharraf's time, as most of the statements have come out, that most, like even the ambassador mentioned it, how Pakistan's nuclear capabilities, installations, all of them were, and now in Ops Sindoor, the very fact that Noor Khan was hit, the very fact that the airbase hit so hard, and the Americans trying to play along with Pakistan, and Pakistan is being seen as wanting to be a virtual, total capture of Pakistan in the hands of America for needs of keeping an eye on China, keeping an eye on Russia, Afghanistan, Iran, everything. So the need for a base in Pakistan is what America is looking at. So all these things in mind, I think the statement coming out about Pakistan definitely puts Pakistan on a back foot.